For this next exercise, we're going to put everything you've learned about shading to the test and draw a cue ball. To begin, you'll need to download the high-res photo reference of the cue ball I supplied you from the course curriculum and print it out on 8.5 by 11 letter-sized paper. It's already in black and white, so it doesn't even need to be a color print. Make sure the piece of paper you're going to draw on is cut to the exact same size. You're going to need your pencil set, a ruler, and have your grayscale tape now next to it just like in my example on screen. But before we begin, I want to quickly explain how to take advantage of the grayscale and shading techniques you just learned. Do you remember the coloring books you did as a kid where you would paint or color by number? Think of the grayscale as training wheels, but you're training yourself to shade by number. But the numbers aren't on the image, so you're going to have to do your best to guess what number or value each part of the ball is. Here's a vector version of what your line drawing is going to look like. I've broken the shadows and highlights into simple shapes. Breaking a complicated image into smaller shapes makes it easier for your brain to manage. This way, you're just dealing with one small piece at a time. And here are your values. On the left, of course, is your grayscale numbered from 10 down to 1. Now all you have to do is guess what value each area on the image is, and you'll know which pencil to use and value to make it. Let's start with this area. What value would you guess this is? I'd say its second value, so use your 4H pencil. This gradient area is a few different values blended together. Its seventh value in the middle, and its fifth value at the bottom. So you would start with the darkest value, in this case 7th, which is a 3B lead, and gradiate down to 5th value, ending with a B lead. Just like in the shading exercise. The shadow at the bottom of the ball looks to be 10th value. And the shadow beneath the ball looks like 9th. Can you see the subtle difference between them? The rest of the drop shadow is about 8th value because it's exposed to more light. And I'd say the background gradiates from 3rd to 4th value. Let's assemble that just using flat shapes. Here's second value, and here's that midtone without the gradient. This shape is the shadow reflected back up into the ball. Here's that 9th value drop shadow. The rest of the drop shadow, which I guessed is about 8th value. And of course the highlights are first value. Mastering drawing starts with learning two techniques, visualizing and simplifying. Any athlete will tell you before they throw a ball or do a backflip, they visualize themselves going through the motion in their mind. It works the same with the drawing. Before you begin, visualize every step you're going to take, one at a time. The second technique, simplifying, is just as important. In the coming lessons, I'm going to teach you methods to simplifying complex images into manageable shapes. Let's begin. First, I'm going to show you an easy trick to getting the placement of the ball right. Do this exercise with me even if you think you can eyeball it, because we're going to be using a more complex version of this technique in the upcoming lessons, and the best way to grasp something new is to start simple. You will need a ruler or a straight edge for this, and just a reminder, this technique will only work if your printout and drawing paper are the same size. I'm going to use my B pencil to draw with because it's light and easy to erase. Don't take a measurement, just place a dot where the ruler touches the margin at the top and bottom of your paper. Then make a straight line where the ball and ruler meet, like this. Then do the same for the right side of the ball. Place a dot at the top and bottom of your paper and make a line where the ruler and ball meet. So now you should have a line on either side of your cue ball. For the next step, I'm just going to make dots on my ruler to correspond with the two dots on the top margin of my printout. No need to take any measurements, I'm just drawing right onto my straight edge. Then I'll line my ruler up with the edge of my drawing paper and place the same two dots there. Again, it doesn't even have to be a ruler, you could easily just use anything with a straight edge. Then do the same on the bottom. You should be following along with each line I draw. Just watch my example, then pause the video and draw your line. Next, draw a line connecting the dots vertically. The line should be the same length as the one you drew on your printout. Now do the same for the top and bottom of the ball. I'm making an X instead of a dot so I don't confuse it with the last set of marks I made on the ruler. Oops, I forgot to draw the line. Not the shadow, by the way, just get the parameters of the ball. Line the ruler up with the top of your page and mark where your X's are right on it. Then line the ruler up with the top of your drawing and transfer your X's from the ruler onto it. Do the same on the right-hand side of the page. My X's line up more or less. And rinse and repeat. Just draw the lines connecting them horizontally. And that box will give you a perfect placement and size for your circle. You can also give yourself a line for where the shadow goes. And you know the shadow is going to end right about here. That's easy enough to guess. And now that you know this system, you can easily measure any other landmark you're having trouble judging. Once you have your parameters in, there are a few ways you can go about drawing the cue ball. You can just try to eyeball it, but most people, including me, can't draw a perfect circle, as you can see. That may look right at a glance, but I assure you it's not. I'm going to use a protractor to make a circle, and you'll be able to see how wrong it is by comparison. Don't worry, I know most of you don't have a protractor laying around the house, so afterwards I'll show you how to quickly make a makeshift protractor at home. If you have a protractor, just set it to half the circle's radius, which should be 2.5 inches, and find the center of the box you just defined. Done. Once you have your circle drawn, you can erase the parameter lines you drew, but leave the one you made for the shadow. For those of you who don't have a protractor and don't possess the superhuman skill of being able to draw a perfect circle, here's a quick, easy way to make a do-it-yourself protractor with items you already have for this class. You'll need a ruler, 2 medium-weight lead pencils, and a roll of tape. Begin by measuring the diameter of the circle, which is 5 inches. To set the protractor, you'll need the radius, which is half the diameter, so divide that by 2. So it should be approximately 2.5 inches. Then line your pencils up so that one pencil is pointing at 0, and the other pencil point is at the 2.5 inch mark on your ruler. Then, using a piece of artist tape, tape the top of the pencils together. I'm sure you all see where I'm going with this by now. Then just place one of the pencils at the center of the parameter box you drew and spin. I admit it's a bit clumsy, but it'll get the job done. The line will come out light because you can't apply too much pressure, so go over it when you're finished. Almost there. Find the spot where the drop shadow meets the right side of the cue ball and mark it on your ruler. Then bring it over to your drawing and place a dot to give yourself an indication for later. I'm not even taking a measurement, I'm just lining my ruler up with the bottom of the page and making a mark on my ruler. And we already established where the shadow ends. I'm sure some of you are capable of drawing this ball and shadow without using this system. Well, you may have gotten close, but the reason I'm using the cue ball as an example to teach it to you is because we're going to use this system on much more complex images in the upcoming lessons. So I want you to have a basic understanding of the formula before you attempt to use it to draw hands or a portrait, for example. As you can see, I just marked where the shadow begins as well. Now that you have the parameters of the drop shadow defined, connect the dots and outline the shape just like you did with the cue ball. I have a very systematic approach to drawing. Once you learn it, you'll be able to draw anything you want. I'm going to break my process down into parts and explain why I do each step as we progress. Step 1, and my first rule to drawing, is always draw the outline first. So do your best to draw the outline of the shadow. It's okay if it looks wrong. The reason I draw an outline first is so you have an opportunity to see if it looks right before you move on to the next stage of the drawing. Just put a line down. Even if it's a little off, you can use your mistake to help you find the right shape. Here's what I mean. Once you have a line drawn, you can compare it to your photo reference and adjust it until it looks right. You just need a starting point. This is what I was talking about earlier. when I explain that I'm going to leave all of my mistakes in the edit of this course. It's a sketch. You aren't meant to get every line right every time. Two of the most important lessons you'll learn in this course is to identify a mistake early and how to fix it. So step 1 is to draw the outline. The second step in the process is to outline the information in the interior of the object. Let me explain. I don't want you to do any shading yet. Just lightly outline where all the shadows and highlights will go, like a map. So let's start working on the interior shapes. Now that you have the outline drawn, and thanks to your measurements, you know everything is in the right place. Next, you can make educated judgments to help you find where each shape should go. For example, you know the shadow's here, so this reflection should start here. And it ends right here next to where the drop shadow starts. It's much easier to judge smaller distances than larger distances, so locating these points should be easy for you. Now that you know where this line starts and ends, all you have to do is judge the curve. And you could do that by relating it to the distance from the bottom of the ball. Next, let's define this big shadow that falls across the middle of the ball. It looks like it starts here, and I know this is difficult to judge because it's a gradient, so there is no defining line. Just do your best to guess where it averages. It ends here. That'll help. Don't worry about making it perfect. You'll have plenty of time to adjust it during the shading step in the process. The highlights here, just lightly outline it. It helps to have as many landmarks as possible, and in this case we only have 3. The reflection, the shadow, and the highlight, so take advantage of everything at your disposal. And that completes your preliminary drawing. As we progress, you'll learn that the reason I've structured each step in this order is to avoid doing a lot of work that has to get erased. Making a mistake and having to erase is a natural part of the drawing process, but you want mistakes to present themselves as early as possible because you don't want to have to erase hours of shading on a mistake you made in the preliminary drawing.